Hey guys, this is Max here at MaksWerks, and today we got another project bike in the garage. So this is actually a 1988 Honda CBR1000F, or the Hurricane as it's called. I actually picked this bike up last night. It's got all the things, so this video is going to be kind of a little bit of tech stuff and some business stuff, and basically like how just like we did with the VFR, I'm going to show you guys how to take care of an older car super bike and basically flip it and make some money off of it. So like I said, I picked it up for $300. The biggest selling points were it had a title and it ran a year ago. In my experience, pretty much everybody says their bike ran a year ago because it seems like a nice, not too distant number and not soon enough that you could just fire it right up. So brief analysis of the motorcycle shows basically that it's dusty, dirty, but most of the important stuff seems to be there. It has a petcock, which I like to see on older car bikes. It means that even though the bike's been sitting, the petcock was closed, which means that the only gasoline in the carburetors was in there originally, which means that the amount of oxidation on the jets and the amount of basically gooey caramel you're going to find in there is going to be pretty minimal. The other thing is I was actually able to save the battery. One of the things that you can do on these older bikes that have batteries that you fill up with acid is the water evaporates over time, so if you just refill the battery with distilled water, let it sit for a little bit, and then put it on a standard battery charger cycle, I was actually able to recover this battery and the bike cranks. So you can kind of see I put together a list back here, things we're going to need to do. Whenever you go into a project like this, you always want to minimize your costs. So there's certain things that I feel that I need to do before I sell the bike, and they cost money, and some things are optional, and we're gonna talk about that a little bit. So oil and the filter, any bike's been sitting a year, I always do an oil and the filter. Oil filter on this bad boy was 10 bucks. I already have some oil. If you don't, $13 at Walmart, good to go. The air filter probably needs to be replaced. It's a $20 part. We're gonna take a look at it, clean it out. I might replace it later, I might not. The headlight seems to operate on high beam only, no low beam, so I gotta figure out if that's a bulb issue or if that's a wiring issue. Rear left turn signal is out. The bulb is simply burnt out, and we will need to find what that bulb is and replace it. The run stop switch doesn't seem to affect cranking. The bike cranks. We're gonna see if that makes an impact or not. We're going to give it a full fuel flush. We're going to drain all the old nasty gasoline in there, and we're going to fill it up with fresh gasoline. I took a look inside the tank. It's really clean and shiny, so we don't have to worry about any rust issues. We're going to take the carbs out. We're going to clean them, give the whole bike a bath. We're going to lube up all the cables. A lot of the bike is real stiff. Probably going to put in new fuel lines. Definitely going to put in a new fuel filter and maybe replace the grips, which look to be made up mostly of electrical tape. So realistically, going back to the business side of things, I picked this bike up for $300. I should be able to sell it for $1,800 to $2,000 in running condition. I will probably get insurance on it for like a week and go and get it inspected, because a lot of times that really adds value because it makes sure that the bike is ready to go on the street. So let's kind of get started. Okay, so that's pretty much done. A few things I want to point out. This is the old gas that came out of there. Gas should be basically clear with maybe a slight yellowish tinge. It should definitely not be this color. But thankfully the inside of the tank is really pretty much immaculate, so we don't have to stress over that. And so this is a temporary container. Obviously I'm going to dispose of this properly. But connections we had to take off. Right over here you had your fuel level sensor. It goes up to the tank. It basically sticks in right here and plugs in right there. We had a vacuum line right here, and this is one of those cool late 80s things that you find on some Japanese bikes. It's just awesome. You see this right here? This is actually a sliding stand that locks in like this and holds your gas tank up for you so you can change your spark plugs. You know, and it's just little things like that that were thought of that really give these older bikes a good flair. And if I bring you in a little closer, you can actually see the cylinders are numbered in the casing, on the casting. And if I remember correctly from the manual, number 2 cylinder, this right here is where we will do, later on we'll do a carb sync. And this is our dominant cylinder, so this is where we're going to set the carb sync from. You can see from this design, this motor is actually really huge. It's really wide. And there's, if you do some reading online, you'll find it's a pretty common joke. People say that you actually mount the frame to the motor rather than the motor to the frame. But here we can see our coolant lines. They're pretty much slack. So we can take a look at what's going on in here. Pretty much nothing, it seems. So we'll have to top that off a little bit. So you got your coils right here for the cylinders. We're probably gonna, I ordered new spark plugs, so we're gonna be changing those. This is hardened, so I'm not sure what this epoxy material was that they tried to seal this air box with, or why they did that. But we're gonna find out, because we really need to pull the carbs out to have them cleaned up. So I got one of the spark plugs out, and these are actually car-size spark plugs. They're 3/4 inch or an 18mm bit, or an 18mm socket will work. These are pretty old, and I'm glad we're replacing them, as are these coils. There is spark when you crank it, so if we set this up like that, I don't know if the camera's going to be able to catch that, but if you crank it, you can see there is some spark, but it's really pretty weak. And I'm really hoping it's just these old spark plugs that obviously have quite a bit of corrosion on them, rather than coils, because that's really not in the budget. So here's the fuel pump assembly. I haven't had a chance to test this yet, but that's what we're about to do. But it's fully encased in rubber for insulation. And I actually feel it's quite warm, which makes me wonder if it's actually not spinning, because I haven't heard it yet. Here's the fuel filter. We're obviously going to be replacing the fuel filter unit. Normally this, you can buy a generic one, go to Walmart or Pep Boys or something, and I would just get a generic fuel filter. You don't need this model specific one. So we've hit a bit of a snag here. Here's your old fuel filter, and it actually looks fairly clean inside. Not, well, no, actually it's pretty nasty from this end, because I guess flow goes that way. But we'll replace this. This is a few bucks from a gas station or whatever, so it's not a real huge deal. The real problem is this guy, which is your original Mitsubishi fuel pump, and it is totally dead. The coils inside are burnt out, so this thing isn't spinning at all. Now, that kind of is annoying, because that means there's more money that's going to come out of our bottom line. But also, this could be fairly expensive or fairly cheap. It's all a matter of finding the appropriate unit at the right price. And as you can see, it's also got this interesting switch back here, and I'm not really sure exactly what it was supposed to do. I imagine it's some sort of fuel pressure switch, which will make this a fairly unique part, and thus driving up its price. But until I do an eBay search, I won't really be able to tell you guys how much this is going to cost. But it is going to have to be replaced for the bike to run. Alright, so there are 3 Phillips head bolts that hold this right here in place, which contains the air filter here on the side of the motor. Here's the air filter. It actually just slips right in there like that, or I'm sorry, like this guy just sits in there. So the cool thing is this is a K&N unit. Right there you can see it's a K&N unit. It's about 50 bucks, and we can wash it up and re-oil it, and it'll be good as new. Alright, so this is actually fairly complicated. You got 4 Phillips head screws up here, 4 Phillips head screws over here, and it actually took quite a bit of prying with a proper pry bar to get these carbs to actually pop out here. So now they're pretty much loose, and we can just yank them out. So next I'm going to take off the choke right here, and then pull off the throttle once I get the carbs up and out. Alright, so here's our carb bank, and it obviously sits like this. This is 1, 2, 3, and 4. And actually, just from an outside visual perspective, these actually look pretty good. And we're going to try to clean them up without actually changing any settings, so we have to do a minimum amount of syncing, if at all. If we take a look at them from this side, you know, you can spin the throttle, and you can see the insides are really fairly clean. So we're just going to take the bowls apart, make sure everything's nice and clean, and pilot jets are nice and clean, and put them back in the bike. Now, the trick to this, we're going to start with this carb right here, is to break all 4 of these screws with a proper screwdriver size, and basically just break each one loose and then take all of them off to make sure you're not putting any extra strain. The other thing that you can do is you can actually use a pair of vice clamps, like these guys, and what you can do is you can back them out and basically wedge onto one of these bolts. If you think you're going to strip the head, grab on tight and then use this to actually open it. I've done that several times on a lot of bikes, and it's my my tried and true method. So let me get this bowl off and I'll show you guys what's inside. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of rust and stuff in here, but thankfully these bowls are empty, because generally your biggest concern isn't necessarily rust, because it's fairly easy to clean up, but rather oxidation from the gas. And since these bowls are actually empty, that means they've been sitting empty, which means they basically just need a general cleanup, and we probably won't have to replace any jets or needles. So let me see. Brake clean works wonders for cleaning this stuff. I always want to make sure there's a fan here for ventilation, because there's quite a bit of fumes coming up from this. And this right here is actually sealed, but you could drill this out, and then that would give you access to the fuel screw if you were doing custom jetting or something like that. So that's basically all you get out of it. So there's our bowl. We just cleaned it out generally. A little brake clean, a little wire brush. Here's what we took out of here: pilot jet, main jet holder. This valve right here is actually not removable either. It's for the AP pump, I believe. But this is our pilot jet right here. Let me see if I can read the number off of it. Unfortunately, I can't read the number off of it. And the main jet is a 120. The main jet is a 120 main jet holder. And what we're going to do is we're going to clean this up. We're going to clean the bolts up. We're actually going to reassemble the bowl. And then we're going to flip it over and take a look in the vacuum side. Now, here's everything all reassembled. And what you really want to look for here is, it doesn't really matter how shiny the brass is on the outside. When I clean them with compressed air and brake clean, what I do is I hold them up to a nice bright light. And what you want to see is you want to see a nice circle in there. No blockage, no deterrent. And you, after a while, like for instance, after I cleaned this off, I found out that the pilot jet was a 35. And after you do this for a while, you'll get kind of an understanding of about how much light you should expect to see through one of these when you're looking at it. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to put this bowl back on, and then we're going to move to the top, and then I'm going to work through the other 3 carburetors. So that's what it looks like from the top. Basically, this spring sits underneath this cap. The other thing that'll help a lot with a lot of this stuff is a little PP blaster gets the bolts loose. Let's see. Here's the needle assembly. The needle looks really clean. I'm going to go ahead and unscrew it up here and pop it out. But this is a vacuum activated carb, so basically it slows down the throttle response using a vacuum. And there's a little where is it right there? There's a little tab right there. So that's got to sit right there, and you basically put this down, then you tighten the cap on top. It's a really basic carburetor design. We're just going to make sure it's really clean. We're going to go through and do all 4 of them, and then we're going to pop them back on the bike. Another cool cost-saving thing is these fuel pumps are really expensive, but I took a look online, and pretty much everybody converts their carbs to gravity-fed because the fuel pump's not really needed. So we're probably going to end up doing that. Just run the fuel tank directly down from the petcock to these carburetors, and basically feed fuel to them like that. So I'm going to go ahead and finish cleaning all this stuff up. All 4 carbs are going to be exactly the same, and then we're going to be able to bolt them right back in. Just kind of an aside, this is the needle that I pulled out. It basically sits right here. As you can see, it's fully non-adjustable, and this was done to prevent people from screwing with the fueling in order to make the bike not pass emissions. So this is the original stuff, and basically there's just a little Phillips head lock. This just basically locks in. So that's it.